Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to Metro's headquarters. Our headquarters facility is equipped with the latest safety technology. In the event of an activation of the alarm system, please proceed to the nearest exit. Our designated assembly point in the event of a building evacuation is nearby Hancock Park. In the event of a medical emergency, I will fetch the AED located in our entryway and render aid while our security force will contact and coordinate with first responders. Metro is committed to ensuring all stations, buses, and rail cars are accessible. Each rail station has an elevator and accessible fare vending machines with low panels and extra-wide accessible fare gates for customers who utilize mobility devices. Additionally, all Metro buses are accessible with 2 wheelchair securement areas on each bus, and each Metro bus operator is trained to operate them. Our operators are required to request if you want to be secured. If you acknowledge that you request help with securement, the Metro bus operator must provide assistance. On Metro Rail, remember to put brakes on any mobility devices while riding to ensure your safety. Elevators are the safest way for persons who utilize mobility devices, including wheelchairs, to access a Metro Rail station. Metro elevators have security cameras and emergency intercoms, so occupants can contact the station manager if needed. For additional safety tips and more information, access the customer guide to Metro Bus and Metro Rail for people with disabilities and senior citizens, which is available at WMATA.com. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Ms. Impastato. We're going to begin today's activities with the meeting of the Executive Committee. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'll ask the Board Corporate Secretary to call the roll. Ms. Ellison.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair Babers.
Present.
Alternate Director Zappi.
Present.
Director Klein.
Present.
Alternate Director Alcorn.
Here.
Director Lowe.
Present.
Director Drummer.
Present.
Director Martin Proctor. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Does anyone have any objections or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We have minutes of our January 23rd, 2022 Executive Committee meeting and the committee's executive sessions of July 23rd and July 14th before us for approval. Are there any objections or comments to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. Now on to our action item, acceptance of the OIG's reports. We have one item on our agenda this morning to accept 2 reports from the Inspector General. Under the board's bylaws, the Executive Committee is responsible for reviewing and accepting reports from the Inspector General. The committee has reviewed the following reports: the audit of WMATA's defined benefit pension plans, and the annual audit and special projects plan for fiscal year 2023. Before we ask our acting Inspector General to provide us with a brief overview of these 2 reports, I would like to note that alternate Director Zappi, who is filling in for Secretary Ports today, will be recusing himself for this item. Good morning, Mr. Acting IG. Mr. Flavas.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Clark. As you indicated, we have 2 matters that we're presenting. First, we are presenting the report concerning the audit we conducted at the request of WMATA management of WMATA's 5 defined benefit pension plans. In fiscal year 2019, WMATA had a total liability for their pensions in the amount of $5.1 billion with an unfunded status of $867 million. By 2021, the total pension liability decreased to $4.6 billion. However, the unfunded status increased to $1.15 billion. OIG found that the management of the plans could be strengthened by improving the governance over WMATA defined benefit pension plans and by examining alternative retirement plans for new employees. These conditions resulted because internal control provisions were not set forth in the respective union collective bargaining agreements or pension plans, and alternative retirement plans for new hires were not considered. Without appropriate management of the pension plans, WMATA cannot ensure optimal pension plan performance. Furthermore, without change, the underfunded status of the pension plans could increase further in the future, which could potentially make the pension plans unsustainable and severely impact WMATA retirees and benefits. OIG had 6 recommendations that were all agreed upon by management. I'd like to thank WMATA management and staff for their cooperation during this audit. If there are any questions, I'd gladly take them.
Yeah, just want to make sure I understood what I read in the report. How many separate pension plans does WMATA currently operate?
5.
And each of those plans has a separate governance structure?
Yes.
And are we paying separate management fees to professional investors in order to steward the assets within the plans?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Do you have to take a separate vote on that one? Or we're going to do the vote. Okay. All right. All right. Acceptance of these reports constitutes the board's authorization to post them on the WMATA website, provided the Inspector General has conferred with the General Counsel and confirmed that any private or confidential information has been removed and/or redacted in accordance with applicable law and WMATA policy. I would like to move approval of this item, and is there a second from a committee member?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Babers. Any other final comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Ellison, please call the roll.
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein? Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. These reports have been accepted, and the Inspector General has been authorized to post them online. Since there is no further business to come before the committee, we will stand adjourned, and we will move directly to the board meeting. Good morning again. I'm Paul Smedberg, Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being with us here today. Since we just called roll at our previous meeting, we'll move right to the next item. First, we have approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, I'd like to consider the agenda approved as presented with one change. Mr. Zappi will be recusing himself from the Amtrak item, so we'll remove it from the consent item and we'll vote on it separately. Are there any objections to the agenda as presented and amended? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes for approval. The board meeting from January 23rd, 2022, June 23rd, 2022, and executive sessions from June 23rd, 2022, and July 14th, 2022. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections to these sets of minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to public comment and reports by the advisory board. First, we'll hear from our customers and stakeholders. I'll ask staff to play the comments submitted.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We have 3 sets of comments to come in today. First set is from Callahan Cox of Montgomery County, Maryland. As WMATA deals with budget deficit issues, I'm wondering if you have considered systematic change options in increasing ridership. For example, is there a way for DC to limit the number of cars that come into the city or toll them? I understand this is a lofty goal, but it's important to consider options that don't just punish people who rely on public transportation, especially if equity and sustainability are true values of the organization. Next set from Tyler Robertson from the District of Columbia. The events of Saturday evening, July 16th, why ride Metro? The bigger question, why pay for riding? It's free. This evening, I watched 6 people jump the turnstile at Rhode Island Avenue while paying for my fare, while the Metro agent manager inside the booth watched without saying anything. I rode Metro from Rhode Island Station to Gallery Place to have dinner with friends and watch a show at Shakespeare Theater. At Gallery Place, leaving from and re-entering to return home, I witnessed 7 people jump the turnstile. Why have Metro managers and employees if the operation does not enforce the theft, non-payment of riding Metro? Furthermore, while walking down the red line at Gallery Place, our party was harassed by a group of young adults who were drinking alcohol in white plastic cups, all while 3 Metro police officers observed from the bridge above. Final set is from Dion Ferguson from Prince George's County. In accordance with the ADA Act of 1990, it is unlawful to discriminate against anyone with disabilities, including persons with autism. Customer Dion Ferguson, Metro Access. When it works correctly, it is an excellent service. I feel due to the management, the services could use help. For over a year, I've had to call to find out where is the transportation. Please listen to the recordings. Today, they didn't show up. I have to use the service. How can we make it better? I was on hold for over an hour to speak to the supervisor. Please help. The supervisors make promises but don't follow through. I don't understand placing a driver to pick up a passenger on a military base. He can't get on the base, so the supervisor starts all over again, which can delay the customer by at least an hour. That is unacceptable. I've also talked with Adam Last who assured me that he would handle the matter. The very next day, the driver was 40 minutes late. What would you do if you paid for service that was consistently late? Note, this matter was addressed to the Access Committee, to the Access Department, so they've been in contact with that customer. And the final set from Susan Morris of Montgomery County. I witnessed a passenger light a small cigar using a big style lighter in car 6116 and smoke continuously. He was sitting in the last seat in front of the emergency button. After a couple of stops, a Metro employee entered the same car and stood in front of the smoker. When I pointed out that the passenger was smoking, the employee said that he could do nothing because he was not transit police. I asked him to report the incident. The smoker left the car at Fort Totten after calling me obscene names. I reported the smoking to Mr. Jones at Forest Glen Station. He told me that transit police are not currently enforcing the smoking ban, although smoking is illegal in the system. There's nothing more important than safety on the Metro system. The Washington region would be unlivable without safe transit system. Thank you for reading this. That concludes the public comments for today.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Thank you for everyone who submitted comments today, and I understand we do not have anyone in person. So we'll move on to hear from our two committees. First, we'll hear from the Accessibility Advisory Committee, who has two reports today. First, we'll hear from the ACC Chair, Phil Posner, who is joining us remotely. And after Phil, Denise Rush, the ACC's Vice Chair, and Pat Sheehan have joined us in person to add to the report. Philip, good morning.
Well, good morning.
How are you?
I wish I could be there with all of you, but virtual will work. Pat and I attended the RAC meeting on July the 6th for an update on current platform work that will be ending in September, as well as the planned shutdown starting in October, as well as the status of the 7000 series cars. On July 11th, staff briefed the Bus Rail Subcommittee on all of these projects and plans for moving disability and other passengers through the 7-month shutdown of Yellow Line stations. After a long discussion of the accuracy of the trip planner and fare calculator used for Metro Access rides during this period, the committee made a motion to request that the board implement a sustainable flat fare for bus, rail, Metro Access during that period, so that, once again, understandability for the rider is the number one request. Sustainability for the system is also a number one request. Now, let me ask Denise to report on her Waymap experience for blind wheelchair riders, followed by Patrick, who had a similar white cane experience, and also to speak about IRA, which another wayfinding system that we're currently working on. In addition to that, he will talk about the Department of Transportation and the DMV jurisdictions working with our committee to develop national and local standards for floating bus stops. So, Denise, I see you have a microphone. Please take it.
Morning, Denise.
Good morning and welcome, Randy Clark, the new GM. I am Denise Rush, Vice Chair of the AAC and Vice Chair of the Metro Access Committee also. I want to talk about the Way Map. I think it's the greatest thing since the hot dog met the roll. It's going to be great for anybody, not just handicapped. That's going to be a plus plus. But visitors, anybody riding, once it gets up and running, you're not lost. It tells you where the Subway store is located so that you will know where to go to get to the elevator, to go up, to go down, to transfer to another line. It is great. It is not perfect, and nothing is. Marriages aren't perfect, but it's a start, and I really feel good about it. Even I used it with my wheelchair. You can use it with your cane, low vision. It just directs you when you're lost. And it's great for visitors, newcomers to the area. And I just think the merchants are gonna really love it also. Another thing I want to talk about is the safety on the metro and the jumpers and the people who are not courteous to everyone. I don't know what we're going to do about it because the city is having a problem. DC, Maryland, and Virginia are having a problem about safety. But we've got to figure out where people are not afraid to come out and ride transportation because it's great if you use it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Any
Denise.
questions?
Patrick, I think, Patrick, you were next.
All right, and Mike, no, very good. Thank you very much.
Hey, Patrick.
Good to be at a podium and a microphone once again. Thank you. To give a little more information with respect to the WayMaps project, it is an internal GPS system which is set up between the WayMaps Corporation, Verizon, and WMATA and the disability community. First thing I would like to say about that is that Office of ADA Programs has engaged the Accessibility Advisory Committee for over a year, talking to us about it, engaging us, bringing us in up front on it. The GPS, internal GPS within the WMATA system, as Denise said, is accurate to within feet. So it's a very impressive system, as accurate as you would have GPS outside, even more accurate than what you'd have as far as GPS outside the system. We have looked at a couple of stations. It allows us to track inside the station things as easily as fare card machines, maps, and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a huge boost. What is impressive is that they're going to start a soft rollout with this system in September. And you have a disability community from Virginia, from DC, and from Maryland all engaged in this process. So kudos to ADA Programs. Kudos to WMATA for putting this program through. You've had a lot of good people engaged in this program. The technology is impressive, and I understand that in talking to the WayMaps people, what they have done is chosen Washington, D.C. as their pilot city of all the cities that they've tried this program in. What they want to do is start with WMATA, complete the entire system in about 18 months, I think it is, and then they want to expand this so that you can also have the museums, the monuments, stores and just make this internal GPS system DC-wide. So that's very impressive with WMATA as the first start of the system, engaging the disability community throughout the region, which I think is very impressive. So thank you for that from the disability community and especially the blind community. It's going to be very impressive. My other point that I want to talk about deals with, as Phil said, floating bus stops. These are bus stops that are out away from the curb that have been put out there so that you can have a protected bike lane. It allows bikes to be taken off the sidewalk in a protected area, but it does provide somewhat of a hazard for blind people who may not understand that the bus stop has been moved. We've worked, the Accessibility Advisory Committee has been working with Bus Rail at WMATA to look at, and DC Transit to look at the initial configuration of the floating bus stops, as we call them, the safety issues involved with that, and we have a very good working relationship. The nice thing is that, or maybe not so nice thing, but we ran into this situation in 2017 in Montgomery County. So we have seen the current configuration of these floating bus stops, and we are working with DC to give them our experience and suggest improvements to the system. I think that the ultimate way we want to go, and we know that this is something that's set up statewide, region-wide, like Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and DC Transit, and in Virginia. But what we have, what we consider to be solutions for the floating bus stop issue. We are sharing that through the appropriate people at WMATA and also DC Transit. And what we would like to see when this gets further down the road, let's say in the fall, is a regional solution to the floating bus stop issue. It is something that the rest of the United States is looking at, because floating bus stops are not just here in Washington, D.C., but are nationwide. And being to implement a solution that is going to work for both bike riders and for the disabled community, providing effective communication to both groups is going to be enormous. So once again, it would be something that we could point to in Washington, D.C., and provide a solution to other areas that they could implement, giving credit to D.C., Virginia, Maryland, WMATA, and the disabled community who've all worked together to get this done. So we're working, we've got good partnerships. Once again, kudos to ADA Programs, Accessibility Advisory Committee, who's all over this, and we're bringing our best to provide solutions and working with the right people. Thank you very much. Questions for myself or Phil or Denise?
Any questions for the ACC? All right, thank you, Patrick.
I'm sorry, the only other thing that I would also add, I neglected to say this, the other part of the solution for WayMaps, particularly with the work that we've done, is another remote access product called IRA, which uses cameras on iPhones to help blind people work together. We have worked with the bus folks with WMATA to educate them on what could be done with this technology. It's something that has been implemented in other transit properties nationwide, and allows for visual agents to give on-the-spot guidance to individuals with disabilities using your iPhone. It's very impressive technology. It's something that would be very useful, particularly when we're doing system upgrades and as we do each year. So it's another technology that we're pushing forward with WMATA as one of the solution sets that you can have in your toolkit. So between that and the WayMaps, I think we will be in good shape going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Philip.
Yes, thank you so much. And before I go, let me once again invite you all to come meet with us in September. Have a wonderful August, and tell us what you want us to do to help out some more in September. Thank you so much for your patience today.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, now we'll hear from the Riders Advisory Council. Mr. Meyer, welcome. Actually, we get to meet in person.
Yeah, I was about to say, Chairman Smedberg and fellow members of the board, thank you very much for having me. Not only is it great to meet you all in person, but this is my first time here at the new headquarters. And so it's a very nice facility, and congratulations to everyone in your transition into this new building. It's a pleasure to present with you our RAC report from our July 2022 meeting. And there were two main topics that were discussed. First, the more near-term immediate subject, which was the impending extended closure of the blue and yellow lines, and then another longer-term project, and that is Metro's transition to a zero-emissions bus fleet. So first, with the yellow and blue line shutdown, Metro staff was very courteous and provided information about the upcoming shutdown and changes of the blue and yellow lines for both the Potomac Yard tie-in, but also the repair of the Potomac River Tunnel and Bridge for the yellow line. Staff also gave a detailed description of alternative transportation options, whether that be the VRE, express bus routes, or expanded service for our Metro bus fleet. That was very comforting to hear that there were a variety of alternative options for riders that depend on those lines. They also briefed us on the communication strategy to ensure that our riders are as informed as possible. RAC members ask Metro to continue to push out that information via all available channels as this project approaches, including and especially the online trip planner, as well as the travel training program for customers with disabilities. I think it go without saying that more communication, you really can't go wrong in that direction, especially with our riders. In addition, RAC members also encourage Metro to give riders realistic information about the travel time changes that may result from these alternative options. And yeah, and as the yellow line portion of the project is expected to last several months, we're hoping that the Metro staff will closely monitor and keep the riders and relevant stakeholders informed of any alternative transportation changes. Now with the longer term project, and that is the zero emission bus transition, that was amazing, frankly, to hear their, both the plan as well as the vision for WMATA. Members of Metro's Zero Emissions Bus Transition Team gave an overview of Metro's plan to ensure that we can transition our bus fleet to entirely zero emissions vehicles by 2045. And we had a very productive conversation about expectations that riders would have during this transition period, as well as opportunities to involve the riders and ensure that this transition goes smoothly. We're encouraged that Metro is taking a very methodical approach to this, and especially given its significance for environmental purposes, as well as just general operations for WMATA. Another thing that we talked about briefly was our public participation and outreach plan. RAC members are increasingly committed to increasing their direct engagement with riders and other community groups. And the goal is really to ensure that we have a two-way street where we're not only receiving feedback and communicating it to the board and relevant Metro staff, but we're also disseminating information from Metro to the greater rider population. And that's something that the RAC can always strive to do better, whether it be about upcoming projects, policy changes, or new initiatives that the board is undertaking. And I'd like to thank the Metro's Department of Customer Service, Communications, and Marketing for providing RAC with a lot of useful resources to help that happen, as well as John and our board liaison, Bryna, for all the great work that they do in that respect. And lastly, but certainly not least, is I'd like to join all the riders and important community stakeholders in welcoming Randy Clark to WMATA. It's really encouraging just the very few days, first few days that you've been on the job, to see the outreach that you've been doing to our riders. And we're looking forward to working with you and have you at one of our RAC meetings very soon. And welcome, and we're here to help however we can. Thank you very much, members of the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Brian? Comments? All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. That concludes our advisory committee reports. Now we'll go on to the chair's report. As Brian indicated, this is an exciting day for us. We'll be formally swearing in our new GM and CEO. But before we do that, the board would like to recognize the dedicated service of interim general manager and CEO, Andy Off. Andy, I think you're here. I saw you somewhere. Andy, the board is grateful for your service to this agency and the region over the past 2.5 months as our interim leader. You have provided leadership and a steady hand in the fulfillment of the authority's mission during this especially difficult time. You have guided WMATA on transitional capital projects, making tremendous progress on the Silver Line Phase 2 and platform improvement projects. You acted decisively and set the path to improvement on the 7000 series rail cars, striving to give our region as much service as possible. Along the way, you continued the regional and federal partnerships that are so important for the betterment of WMATA and its customers. You also oversaw safety reform work, working with the Chief Safety Officer and her team on major areas of concern, including recertification of operators and corrective actions from numerous audits. You effectively partnered with the board to ensure a seamless transition in this important time for the authority, and we really, truly appreciate all the timely dissemination of information and getting issues to us in a thoughtful way. Therefore, I'd like to move the following commendation. Whereas the Board of Directors recognized the need to appoint an interim general manager who would sustain the continuity of WMATA operations in a climate of tight resources, high scrutiny, and difficult decision-making. And whereas the Board of Directors called upon Executive Vice President of Capital Delivery, Andy Off, to serve as WMATA's interim general manager and chief executive officer at a special meeting of the Board of Directors on May 12, 2022, because of its high regard for his demonstrated management ability, considerable experience, and recognized qualities of leadership. And whereas during this time, Mr. Off has led the organization during difficult times with returning the 7000 series rail cars to service and safety issues, and whereas he also provided important leadership on the progression of the Silver Line Phase 2, and whereas Mr. Off continued focus and collaboration on many fronts, such as WMATA's work on platform improvement projects, 4th of July service, Potomac Yard infill station, service changes, and construction of new WMATA offices in Maryland and Virginia. Whereas throughout his tenure, Mr. Off's selfless commitment and sense of purpose led directly to a continuity of operations and a smooth transition for our new general manager. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the WMATA Board of Directors commends Andy Off for his leadership and services as interim general manager and chief executive officer for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, and be it further resolved that the WMATA Board of Directors offers its sincere gratitude for his selfless dedication and commitment during his tenure as interim general manager and chief executive officer. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lowe. I think that's unanimous. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. The motion has been approved and seconded. Sorry, that's what I'm used to doing. Now I'll call on the board corporate secretary to administer the vote.
Thank you, Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers. Aye. Mr. Zappi.
Aye.
Ms. Klein. Mr. Alcorn. Dr. Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. Drummer.
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Congratulations. So Andy, I know So Andy, I know you're really going to love this part, but would you like to say a few words?
No, I'll be very brief, but thank you, Chairman Smedberg and members of the board for the opportunity. I mean, it truly was, a privilege, to have this opportunity. I would like to thank my colleagues, from the senior executive team for their support. Certainly it has been, a challenge, but, one I've thoroughly enjoyed. I think, we've been focusing on the right things, and I think also really trying to focus on making sure, we support Randy and give him all the support and resources he needs. So hopefully we've been able to do that. But thank you very much.
Thanks. And Andy, we can't thank you enough. You really did a great job this 2.5 months. Sincerely. I would also like to recognize our Chief Safety Officer, Teresa Empasado, for her leadership and support of Mr. Off and WMATA during this interim period. Teresa, I think you're, I see you up there, if you would stand. Really appreciate all your work. And so now we'll turn our attention to our new GM CEO. Welcome to your first board meeting, Randy. I know I speak for all of us when I say we are very pleased to have you on board. Randy's first day on Monday, and the board was excited to see him hitting the ground running. The day one, he was out writing the system, engaging with customers and stakeholders. Randy is an accomplished and innovative executive who has a track record of effective leadership. There we go. Through his thoughtfulness and expertise paired with enthusiasm and desire to improve service is the combination we need right now to make real change. He will help the board transform WMATA and redefine how WMATA moves forward over the next several decades and continues to be an integral part of the region's success. With Randy leading Metro, the board will continue in our governance and oversight role in a way that will help him succeed in running the day-to-day operations of Metro, to bring back riders, better service for our customers, rebuild confidence in the system, and restore credibility with our funders and stakeholders. The board is excited to be working with Randy on sharing Metro's successes and making improvements for our customers in the region. Randy, welcome to Metro, and I'll ask you to join me up front here so we can formally administer the oath.
There you go.
Make sure I don't mess up the words. We should probably do it here in front of it. Okay, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Randy S. Clark,
I, Randy S. Clark,
do hereby solemnly affirm
do hereby solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Compact,
and the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Compact,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of General Manager and Chief Executive Officer
and will faithfully discharge the duties of General Manager and Chief Executive Officer
of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority.
of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So that concludes my report, and now I'll turn the floor over to our new CEO, GM and CEO, Mr. Clark.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Chair. And I'm glad that I didn't make any mistakes with those words. I felt like last time I did that, it was my wedding. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, board members, members of the media, customers, partners, and staff. Very, very excited to be here today. I want to really begin by reiterating my thanks to the board for the confidence in me in helping lead this amazing organization through such a critical time, as the chair mentioned. I also want to take a second, and we just gave him a well-deserved kudos, but I really want to thank Andy Off again for his leadership during the last 2 months as interim general manager, and specifically working with me so closely to help with the transition. It was, I think, as Andy acknowledged, a difficult couple months. Andy did it with grace and professionalism, and it was really valuable for someone not only moving across country, but for someone taking this role. So thanks again, Andy, for all of your support. Really appreciate it. As the chair mentioned, we do have many challenges ahead, but I look forward to working with all of our stakeholders, our staff, certainly our customers, as our advisory committees have mentioned, and community members. We need to ensure that Metro delivers the world-class transit system that the National Capital Region needs and deserves. And I've said that before, and I'm going to say that again. This region needs it, and it deserves it, and we're going to get it back to the pride of the region. I do have a couple slides, Mr. Chair, that I thought might help here. So make sure I get this correct. Which way would I point, Jose, to advance this? I do the thing where I point at the TV, but it doesn't. Perfect, thank you. So I want to give a little first week recap. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, I was out early on Monday morning taking the service. I've been on the service every day this week, multiple times, and I'll be out there this weekend. I think every day I'm here, I'll be on the service. And I've got a really great opportunity to meet with a lot of staff and a lot of customers. So at Foggy Bottom is where I started my official first trip as the new general manager of Metro. And I've been out on some other different services since that time. As you mentioned, you'll see some pictures here. I got to really see firsthand from customers on Monday evening. Some of the members of the senior team joined me on what we're referring to as Meet Team Metro. And I'm hoping over time, members of this board will have some nice shirts, the polo shirts, to come join us out on the system. And it's just a really great opportunity to speak directly and hear directly from our customers. We have to acknowledge when things are not going well, and when they are not going well, let's fix them. And that, I think, goes to the chair's point of bringing back trust and credibility with our customers. So thanks to the staff. They did a great job, day one, and they hit the ground running and put together a great event. I appreciate all the customers that had the chance to stop and talk with us. We have a group of upcoming Meet Team Metro events coming up, and they'll be on our website and social media and et cetera to get those out there. And the more people that can give us their information and how the service should run, the better we can go to work to make the service work for them. I did receive a wide amount of feedback, and I thought I'd point out, and I'm going to be coming back to the board, obviously, with an overall assessment after a few months of kind of some overall themes I'm hearing. But I want to just report out quickly on the three things I think I've seen the most, whether it's on media or social media, or things that I heard directly from customers, or quite frankly from staff and some stakeholders I've had the opportunity to talk to. Service frequency, hands down, I think is the topic I've heard the most about. 7K, yes, but also on the bus side, how do we deliver consistent, reliable service? I'll talk about service frequency on the rail side in just a moment, on some improvements there, but there's no question we need to be laser focused on service frequency to deliver the service the customers are after. Also, significant amount of conversation around fare policy. And I use the word fare policy specifically because there's a lot of conversation about fare enforcement or for fare evasion, but also things like flat fares or zone fares or peak fares. And all of those, in my mind, are part of fare policy. Lots of layers to that complicated onion. And it's something that I've already talked to the team about. We want to work really comprehensively on, and then really engage the board on thinking through what are the different types of policy and management aspects to come together in a holistic fare policy. And so a lot more to come on that topic. And then customer communication. And we have a lot of incredible people here at Metro, and I think it's clear to me, and I think a lot of staff members, that we have some room for opportunity internally to help communicate more consistently, more reliably, and most importantly, more proactively with our customers between rail and bus and police, and how all of those things work in whether it's an incident happening or just regular service. And going to be looking forward to the team and trying to get some early action on improving our customer communication. Lastly, I just want to mention on the last piece, you may have seen, I put some social media out. I was also out at our control centers. And I want to just thank all the work of the Control Center team. I know at this organization there's been a lot of critical focus on Control Center operations over the years, specifically on the rail side. I was really happy to see there's a fair amount of transformation that has happened over the last couple of years since I've had the opportunity to kind of know a lot more about what was Metro's Rail Control Center. So I think we're on the path going in the right direction on the Rail Control Center, and specifically related to power topics and the power desk, which was a recent safety kind of finding between internally and WMSC. So I appreciate how hard the team is working on that. That is a very complicated thing, both technically and culturally. And I'm just happy to report back to the board. I see it going in the right direction quickly, and there's clearly more work to do, but I appreciate how hard the team is working on that. Next thing, sorry, I already hit the slide. So I got the opportunity to deliver a couple pieces, I think, of some really good news for the board and for the community today. And day 4 in, I will take all opportunities to deliver some good news to the board. So number 1 is on the Silver Line extension. Clearly a major topic for this organization, something I've been watching, but something you've all been working on for years, to say the least. I think it's a really great that we were able to enter demonstration service at the last board meeting, and Andy was able to explain that piece. So today I have the opportunity to tell you that staff feels very confident that we will be operationally continuing to seek safety certification in October. And that is another really, really important milestone to get the Silver Line up and running. So that doesn't mean that today I'm here and I have a date, but that does mean that we'll have our training, our drills and exercises, our simulation, all of the internal work needed to deliver that project. At that point, the safety department will do a safety certification, and we'll be looking then to our partners at the WMSC and for the FTA to get concurrence. And once that happens, the chief safety officer then can come back to me, and we're then told we are good for passenger service. So I really hope to come back to the board in September as we can kind of more target into potentially dates of opening. But I think this is another really good step. And again, I want to thank Lynn Bowersock, who's kind of stepped up and taken a specific role there. Again, as you mentioned, Chair Andy and his team, but also our partners at the Airport Authority. They have a fair amount of little punch list work they're doing, but they're doing a lot of work. I want to also thank Patty for her amazing work with all of the legal aspects and financial finalization of documents over the last couple months. It's been a lot of work. But so kudos to the team. This is a big step moving forward. So thank you on that. The next thing I wanted to mention, there we go, is another, I believe, a really good positive piece of information to come out to our customers and our partners. Effective Monday, we will go from 20-minute frequency to 15-minute frequency on the blue line, the orange line, and the silver line. Now, is that service to where we exactly want it? No, but that is a big improvement in one interval, and the team is working really hard to deliver that consistently. So as many people will notice publicly, and I hope, and the board, we've delivered now 4 days straight of consistent 8 cars, 8 train sets of 7Ks out in the system. The team and I have talked about, the expectation is we are never going back from that. And the team feels very confident right there on that measure. That kind of production is allowing us to move to a 15-minute service on Monday, and we're going to then continue to work at the next interval and the next interval after that. So I'll be back in September to discuss with the board, hopefully, the next framework of service improvements. But this is a really important, not only on those 3 lines, but I want to really emphasize the network approach to service improvement. So if you're on the red line, the yellow line, or the green line, or our really significant bus system, or a partner bus system, when you transfer inside of our network, you also gain benefit from orange and silver going down in frequency as well. So the entire reliability of the system is improving starting on Monday. So thanks again for the team for all your hard work on that. And to the customers, we know that's not where we all totally want to be, but I hope you are seeing that we're going in the right direction. And with that, Chair, there's obviously many topics that I think I have a chance to dig into, and I'm looking forward to come back and talking to the board about. But I just want to again reiterate how excited I am and my wife is to be back in the Washington region and serving as the general manager of America's transit system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions or comments for our new GM? Dr. Lowe and then Ms. Klein.
Just a couple questions. Thanks for that update. That was great. My first question is about the Silver Line date. And I understand that, like, I don't personally live on the Silver Line, but I understand that to a lot of other people, the date at which the service is going to be available is of great interest and is something that people have been waiting for a long time. But what I'm understanding from your presentation, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, is that date is not just up to us here at WMATA, and that's something that really it needs to be centered around safety, and that this is about making sure that multiple independent parties certify that we are ready to safely operate that line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a good description. So between now and the October ready for safety certification, we obviously have some work we have to do. MWA, our partner, has some finalization aspects they have to do, and they're working really hard on that. And then, as you said, independently, the WMSC and the FTA will then have to give concurrence after we've done our safety certification. So yes, WMATA itself can't say, here's the date. We need others to actually do their piece when ready to give us the concurrence so then we can go into passenger service.
Yeah, and that those aren't rubber stamps, that's real work and important work that could take time.
That is correct. And I want to reiterate, everything I've seen, great partnership, everyone's working well together. But yes, it's not just a check the box. It is really complicated work, and it has to get done. It has to get done correctly.
Okay, that's just something I wanted to sanity check with you, because I know, like, when you get into a new role, there's a desire to have a lot of early wins, and I want that for you. I want that for us. But I know that you yourself are a former chief safety officer, and so you probably don't need me to tell you this, but just to reiterate, safety first. We need to listen to our chief safety officer, and we need to listen to all of the independent parties who have important roles to play in making sure that we are fully compliant with our total safety ecosystem.
I couldn't agree more. And you will actually never hear me, I know you use the phrase safety first. I will, as I said to the media a lot on Monday, you won't hear me talk a lot about safety because I actually believe you will never run service that is not safe. So they're not a binary thing to choose between. We're either running safe service or the service should not run.
Fantastic. My next question is about the upcoming service improvements to Blue, Orange, and Silver, which is just absolutely wonderful news that I'm sure that riders will be really happy to hear. I just want to understand what is operationally enabling us to provide these lower headways. Is that additional 7K, is that 7Ks moving to Blue, Orange, and Silver, or is that being driven by recovering more 6Ks?
So I could get you a little bit more information so I could go through the tables. Obviously,
Please don't have the tables handy right now.
I'm at the 5,000 foot level probably versus the 100 foot on that. But generally speaking, how the team is, it's more availability of equipment. And so both that's work that they've done on more legacy cars and the consistency of legacy cars, and obviously now our consistency with the 7Ks, eight sets of the 7Ks, and then of course it's the recertification and the overall training and staffing. So it's like everything, it's a matrix in our world, so we have to have the staffing and we have to have the equipment, and both have to be consistent to deliver a service plan, because the last thing we want to do is say it's this and then 3 days later it's that. So the team has now got to a point where they're confident on both the equipment availability and consistency and the staffing and people that are certified correctly to run that equipment that's needed on that frequency.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
And just to put a finer point on some of the Silver Line work, MWA itself is still working through a punch list of things that I know Lynn and her team are working with them closely on. Yeah. Ms. Klein.
Thank you. I really mostly just have a couple of comments for you. I know that all of us here are really glad that you are here. We can start moving forward on a number of issues. I think it's fantastic that you started your customer outreach at Foggy Bottom, L'Enfant Plaza on behalf of the federal government. Those are both federal centers of employment. I do want to emphasize that the federal government is throughout the region. Employees work and live all over the region, and we're looking forward to seeing you out on all of the systems, including on the bus, and when, as well, to speak to those employees all over the region. I did want to also note, obviously, you talked about your outreach to riders. I assume you're doing as well outreach to Metro employees who have just as much of that day-to-day experience of what's going on the system as the riders do, and I'm sure you're getting their perspective as well. And I encourage you to continue doing that. But I thought that was a very impressive first week report, and just wanted to share that.
Mr. Zappi, then Mr. Elkhorn.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Randy. We're really happy to have you here. And thank you again to Andy for all of your leadership. And so I was really excited to see the Team Metro initiative. I'm looking forward to joining you at a future event. And I'm just curious if you could share, okay, you hear from customers about a certain issue, what happens next? I saw you had the note cards there, in terms of follow-up and tracking of the concerns and issues that you hear from customers.
Yeah, great question. So obviously some topics are going to be someone wants to get something off their chest and just say X. No problem. And if it's a theme, we're going to I think most people know frequency is an issue. So it's good to hear how they view that and what parts of the system. Then there's some more specific issues. So, there was a gentleman that wanted to talk about a trestle bridge in Georgetown as an example. That's a follow-up that we're going to have to kind of do between, there's a DC component, a National Park Service component, and I have to just work with a team and better understand it and then follow up with that person. So, each issue has its own nuances, obviously. What we want to be able to do, though, is demonstrate to the customers that we're listening and figure out internally how that goes into our overall analysis of customer satisfaction, and then how we are, completing the circle and getting back to customers, obviously. So some customers are saying, hey, just blah, 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 and fix it, and they're walking right by. And others are saying, hey, great, things are fine, and others want to, really get into a topic. One of the things I want to really ground the team and ultimately come back to board on is really moving us, I think, to the root of the question, how we're measuring and therefore working towards customer satisfaction. So a lot of times in our industry, we have a ton of metrics that are input-driven, like, say, on-time performance, right? On-time performance generally doesn't matter to the customer. The customer cares about reliability and the quality of the trip. Mean miles between failures is a great example. So we really care internally, all those types of measurements. The average customer will never care about mean miles between failure. Again, where's the train or bus? Is it meeting its schedule? Can I count on it? So, throughout the world now, and transit's starting to kind of become more kind of retail-centric, we need to have measurements about how our customers care about our product, not necessarily and then we have our own measures internal that deliver to their expectations. So, there's safety, and then there's perception of safety, and how do those interplay and things like that. So that's what we're going to work a lot on, and then bring it back to the board, because then we can move through measurable progress on what really needs to move that needle for customer satisfaction.
Terrific, that's great, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Elkhorn.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, Randy. This is really a great day. This is a good board meeting for you to start, I think. I did want to, before asking a question about the Silver Line, to follow up on some of the discussion earlier, I did want to say thank you very much for your focus on customer service. I know over the years, sometimes there's a tendency, as we do this for a while, to kind of, we are who we are, and lose sight of the fact that we're providing a service to people. And that is what's going to drive ridership. That's going to drive everything. I mean, that's why we're doing this. So thank you for reminding us of that and focusing on that. The other question, though, I had is, you said in September you hope to have a little bit narrower time frame, perhaps, for an opening date for passenger service. Do you yet have an idea of is that going to be maybe a week or two, or is it going to be perhaps a specific day, or you just don't know yet?
I would say I just don't know yet. Today is a big step. Today is a step that drives on last month's step, which is now, we're at the confidence level that we will complete all the work needed in October to get into safety certification, and then look to our partners for concurrence. Obviously, we are going to work as close as possible with our partners, hoping that that concurrence obviously is kind of the finalization of our collaborative process to kind of concur on the safety certification. But to Director Lowe's point, that is not a rubber stamp. It's important work. They need to do their work. We want to respect that they have their role to do. But we know the importance of this project to the region, and the team is incredibly focused on getting there with our partners.
Well, thank you. And I know, as somebody who represents Fairfax County and Virginia, I certainly have heard from a lot of riders that are looking forward to that day, a lot of employers as well. But one of the things, it would be helpful, I think, just to get on the record, and it's maybe been mentioned already, the difference between setting this time in phase 1 of the Silver Line, and I know you weren't here for that, but if you could just address how things have changed a little bit in terms of when the date is actually going to come for passenger service. I mean, what are the different hoops? Because it is a little bit different process today than it was back in 2014.
Yeah, I think to the root of your question, and if I'm not answering this correctly, I'll happy to grab the staff after and give you any more nuance than you need. So kind of the hoops are right now that we're in ORD, we have a pick going on, so staff will pick where they want to be on the system. And so as we got our pick, then people have to be trained. Then we'll work through simulated service. So we'll be running trains to mimic what the entire service will look like with no passengers. We also have a significant amount of, I would call it emergency management, emergency preparedness, emergency management, and safety security drills exercises that we'll do between our internal departments, including our police department and first responders. So we could go through that whole process to ensure if there was an incident that we feel very, we have a collaborative relationship to ensure good safety on that. We have a lot of systems work to do. So now that we're out there and we've taken kind of control of the right-of-way, we have to have our signal maintainers make sure they know how the equipment works and that they're comfortable with that, to rail inspections, to our signage, to wayfinding, how that information gets pulled into real-time signage. So there's a lot of nuance. And then a good example is we have to work with our partners who have regional bus networks to fit in and how they can work within their picks so their service lines up with the train service. After all that is done, our chief safety officer will do a safety certification. It's actually a safety and security certification through our federal process. After she does that, she certifies that, it will go to the WMSC and the FTA for their concurrence that they are good, that we've completed that. She will then tell me, she's good, we're good to run passenger service, and then we can actually cut a ribbon and start running trains.
And I think one difference is in 2014, we had FTA still, but we didn't have WMSC.
Correct.
So I think that's the thing. I don't know if a lot of people recognize that. I know that does put a little bit of uncertainty in the specific date for opening. So, yeah. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Clark. Now we'll move on to the report of the Finance and Capital Committee. Since Mr. Letourneau isn't here with us today, I'll ask that the committee's Vice Chair, Deputy Mayor Babers, to present the report. Ms. Babers.
Thanks, Chair. The following item was referred to the board at the July 14th Finance and Capital Committee. Authorization for public hearing on proposed changes to transit facilities at the Tacoma Metro Rail Station. Staff requested authorization to hold a public hearing and conduct associated outreach on proposed changes to transit facilities at the Tacoma Metro Rail Station as part of a joint development project. Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Babers. Ms. Babers has moved approval. Is there a second from a committee member?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Klein. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll ask the Board Corporate Secretary to administer the vote.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Mr. Zappi? Aye. Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn? Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor? Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the consent items. We originally had 6 items on the board's consent agenda today, but as noted earlier, Mr. Zappi is recusing himself from the Amtrak item. So I'll move it from the consent agenda and vote on it separately. We will address that first item. I would like to move approval of the following item: a resolution to indemnify Amtrak. Staff is seeking approval to indemnify Amtrak to permit WMATA access to Amtrak property in the vicinity of the Rhode Island Avenue Station to complete inspections. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. Any comments? Hearing none, the motion has been moved and seconded. Ms. Ellison, please administer the vote.
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn? Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor? Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda as amended. I would like to move approval of the following items. First, the Fraternal Order of Police Deferred Retirement Option Program Amendment. Staff is seeking approval to reinstate the Deferred Retirement Option Program, or DROP, as part of its collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police. Second, parking and fare waivers for blue and yellow line closures. Staff seeks approval to waive parking fees at 3 rail stations, Franconia Springfield, Van Dorn Street, and Huntington, as well as fares on the Metroway Potomac Yard bus line during the 6-week shutdown period south of National Airport Station for the cutover of the new Potomac Yard station. Additionally, staff requests waiver of the non-rider parking fee at Franconia Springfield for the full duration of the Yellow Line tunnel and bridge project. Third, expansion of Fairfax County free student bus pass program. Staff is seeking approval for authorization to expand the fare buy-down program to include participation by additional schools, to amend the fare buy-down agreement, and to delegate authority to the GM, CEO to negotiate and execute future program changes. And lastly, amendment to the fiscal year 2023 capital budget and authorization. Staff seeks approval to increase the fiscal year 2023 capital budget by $55 million and authorization for the general manager or his designee to purchase property valued at over $1 million for the Western Bus Garage Replacement Project. I would like to move approval of those items. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. Any final comments or questions on any of those? Okay, I'll ask the board secretary to administer the vote.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Mr. Zappi?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Alcorn? Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor? Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the reports from the jurisdictions. District of Columbia, Ms. Babers.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Randy also for his great 3 days. It was exciting to see him at Foggy Bottom and LaFont Plaza Metro stations engaging in the with the customers, and we look forward to a fabulous 20 next years. I'd like to also take this opportunity to tell the listening public and reiterate with the listening public that DC is open. So take a book from our new general manager's page and utilize Metro Rail, Metro Bus, and come to work into DC. Do not drive because, you know, we're open, but let's keep our roads as clear as possible. I'd also like to encourage visitors to come back. We have great, fabulous restaurants, and we also have some of the best free monuments and museums that you can get to. So with that, Chair, this concludes my report, unless Director Lowe has anything to add. Okay, she's good.
All right, thank you, Ms. Babers. WSTC, Mr. Drummer, Mr. Zappi.
I'll add one thing quickly. Welcome aboard. We on the WSTC are just thrilled with your first week, and we look forward to meeting with you in the near future.
Yeah, I'll just add that Montgomery County and Prince George's County is also really excited and looking forward to meetings in the near future.
Federal Government, Ms. Klein.
Director Martin Proctor has this month's report.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, our new GM. Good morning, my fellow board members. We wanted to say, welcome home, Randy. And we are looking forward to working with you in support of our mission of transportation for all. Our federal report today recognizes and celebrates the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and Disability Pride Month, which is this month of July. 32 years ago, on July 26th, the ADA was signed into law. This historic civil rights law protects the rights of people with disabilities throughout this nation. Today, we highlight our programs working to achieve that mission: access and inclusion with regards to Metro Access, the way maps, and priority parking. Disability covers a wide spectrum of individuals. 1 billion Americans now live with a disability and/or chronic condition, including long COVID. So we work in partnership to make sure we are addressing that with WMATA and with the board and with Metro Access. And we are delighted for this new season. In support of our Accessibility Council, we thank you, Phil. We thank you, our presenters today, Ms. Denise and Ms. Patrick. Thank you so much for being here to speak to your experiences on Metro. Everything you tell us helps make us better. Since 1990, Disability Pride Month has been celebrated, and it highlights the awareness of identity, culture, and contributions individuals with disabilities have made to society. That also works to change the way people think about disability and to end that stigma that we talk about with regards to individuals with disabilities being unable to participate in transportation. Under Mr. Clark's new leadership, I know we will continue to move forward with regards to accessibility and accessible transportation inclusion for all, not just for riders, but with regards to push for a more diverse employment and workforce with WMATA and with Metro Access. Director Klein, would you like to add anything? Okay. With that, we want to thank you for your time during this report, and we hope as we go forward, making this place just a little bit more inclusive and more accessible for all, we work with you in this new partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Martin Proctor. NBTC, Randy, we too look forward to meeting with you, possibly at our September meeting. We're also looking at organizing all the mayors and chairs so you can meet with everyone at the same time. And there will also be state legislators there that serve on that group with us. All right, seeing no further business to come before the board, we will stand adjourned and we will reconvene in executive session. Thank you all for being here.